Your line also.
Good afternoon from MRV Book Club and Library G. We are beginning once again a new session of Mr. Rahul Singh from Nanyang Technical University, Singapore, on his book Engineering to Ikigai. He has authored several books on purpose, including Engineering to Ikigai, You Know the Glory, Not the Story, and An Atheist Gets the Gita. Rahul Singh is an author first, then a community builder and a banker also by the profession. Besides his banking, he is a principal of Corporate Advisory Group in Indian Institute of Management, Udaipur. An inspiring personality and a thought leader, Rahul regularly speaks at corporates and universities globally on the topics that concern millennials, such as careers in the 21st century, conscious capitalism, and cross-cultural understanding. Hailing from Ayodhya and brought up in Lucknow, Rahul received a full scholarship to study a Bachelor of Engineering at Nanyang Technical University, Singapore. He received his MBA from IIM Bangalore, and he is the president of IIM Bangalore Alumni Association in Singapore. If you have any questions to Rahul, then please share it in question and answer box so that at the end it will be responded. Over to you, Rahul.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be at Mahindra. Thank you so much, Ashutosh ji, for that lovely introduction. And thank you so much, Shankar ji, for having me here. And Sunil ji, thank you so much for being the man in the background, making sure that this session goes live. So I'm very excited to be here amongst you engineers and managers. So the topic of today's talk is Ikigai. Let me start sharing my screen so that you can see what I have to speak to you about. So I hope my screen is visible now.
Yes, visible.
It's visible, yeah. So we'll talk about Ikigai. Ikigai is a Japanese concept, but before we talk about Ikigai, I wanted to talk about a few other Japanese concepts that you guys might be familiar with because you use them on a daily basis. Now, although I'm trained as an engineer, let me clarify here. I never worked as an engineer per se. All my career has been in banking. But at one point in time, I did want to become a theoretical physicist. So I have my undergrad engineering in photonics, which is basically manipulating light. I did intern at ETH and also at Purdue University while I was an undergrad student in nanotechnology. So I understand a little bit about technology, but not to the extent that any of you would. So what I know about engineering is I think I can barely fill the back of a stamp, a tiny stamp that you have in India. So with that, I will just say that if there is some errors in my presentation, then please let me know. But I'll try my best to maintain a balance between engineering concept and management concept. So with that, let's begin. So Kanban, of course, this is a Japanese word. We know about it. It was made famous by the Toyota manufacturing cycle. So in Kanban, it basically is two words. It means look closely and a wooden board. So what it says is that there are visual clues through which you can improve your processes, through which you can make your processes faster, through which you can make sure that your processes are just in time. So this is one of the concepts that you might be using at Mahindra. Then next concept I want to talk to you about is Kaizen. Again, this is something which you would be familiar. Kaizen, Kai means change and Zen means good, right? So what it means put together is that we need to be continuously improving. We need to be continuously be good. So what is better than good? Better, right? What is better than better? Best. So we have to always continuously keep improving. And related to that, there is a concept called wabi sabi. Now, wabi sabi is kind of opposite of Kaizen. What it says is that you should enjoy the beauty in imperfection because there is never ever going to be perfection. It's like an asymptote, right? We can always aspire to be 100%. We can always aspire to reach there. It's like a bit like capacitor, how you charge a capacitor. 99% of the charging of capacitor happens instantaneously, but then that 1% takes forever, right? So that is how I think Kaizen is, and how it connects to Wabi Sabi, which basically means that you need to be content in whatever the stage is. So while Kaizen talks about continuous improvement, Wabi Sabi talks about being content in imperfection, because you can never actually attain perfection. Okay, but we should always aspire to be perfect. Then coming to the focus of today's talk, we are going to talk about Ikigai. So Ikigai again is a concatenation of two words, Iki, which means life in Japanese, and Kai, which means worth or value. Okay, when you combine these two words, it's a bit like we have Sandhi in Sanskrit. So that Ka becomes Ga to soften the ending. So it becomes Ikigai instead of Ikigai, because if you try to say Ikigai, it's very difficult to pronounce. But if you say Ikigai, it's much more softer to pronounce. This also happens in Sanskrit all the time. So Ikigai, when it put together, it basically means life worth. So what does it mean? It essentially means what makes your life worth living for. What do you live for? That's the basic fundamental meaning of Ikigai. Something that makes your life meaningful, something that makes your life worthy of living, something that gets you excited about life. Let me also tell you what Ikigai is not. Ikigai is not these circles. You would have, some of you might have read books on Ikigai, some of you might have read articles on Ikigai, and some of you might have seen these circles. These circles are not Ikigai. However, we will relook at these circles and try to figure out later in the talk how these circles can actually help us figure out our Ikigai. Again, reminding what Ikigai is. Ikigai is basically finding out what you're passionate about. It's finding out what excites you. It's finding about what makes your life worth living for. Okay, with that, let me now go into something which is going to go a little bit deeper into the topic. And for that, I will use a concept which I call cash, C-A-S-H. So C-A over there is career. S over there, or a dollar over there, is is salary, and H is happiness. So first we are going to talk about careers or project. So let's go into it. Why do we pick a career, or why do we as companies pick up a project? So in my entire presentation, I will talk about, on one side, about life, and I will also draw the parallel about company at the same time, because these are not two different things. If you think about it, any company is an organization. An organization, there is a word there, organ. So a collection of organs is an organization. So from that point of view, an organization is not very different from a human in terms of its behavior, in terms of its characteristics, in terms of its ambition, in terms of its faults that it can make, in terms of the follies it can make, in terms of the aspiration it has. So when we talk about life and management, these are not different things. These are exactly same things. So on one side, I'll talk about how this Ikigai concept applies to life. And then I will also talk about how it applies to management, or how it applies to companies as such. Okay, so why do we pick up a career as individual? Obviously, because every career, no matter what you're doing, whether you are an engineer, whether you are a manager, whether you are a chartered accountant, whether you're a librarian, no matter what, fundamental at the crux of it is cash. It gives you money, right? That is why we need a career, because nothing wrong with money. One of the four purusharth in our system, in our Indian system, is actually artha, right? There is artha, karma, dharma, moksha. So a lot of time we think money is bad. No, money is the energy that keeps the entire system moving. It's a bit like the sun in the solar system. What happens if you take away the sun? Not only you will not have energy, but all the planets will go astray. So you could be doing a lot of things in your life. You could be painting, you could be running, you could be a father, you could be a child to your parents, you could be a lot of these things. But at the center of all this is your career. At the center of all this is cash. The cash that is given to you in exchange of your time, that gives you the energy so that you can then have all of these planets around you. You are like a solar system. So no matter what career you choose, fundamentally at the heart of it is money or cash. So first I'm going to talk about how to maximize this cash. All of us want to have some money, some want more money, some want less money, but we try to maximize it in some way or form. So let's, for one moment, let's assume we want to maximize the money that we are ever going to get. And I'm going to first talk about how we can do that. So I know some of you might find this a bit counter intuitive to what the talk is about, but let's just go with the flow. Let's just talk about money and let's just talk about how to maximize money, and then we'll come to Ikigai. Okay. First of all, rich or broke. This is no brainer. If I were to ask you what is rich or broke, is it money or is it something else? And I have done this with many people. I have done this with school students. I've done this with engineering students. I've done this with MBA students. I've done this with professionals like yourself. All of them, without a fail, say that rich or broke is not money. It's a mindset. And how do we know that it's a mindset? Look, in India, there were two brothers, and these brothers kind of in some sense are competitors of your company. And one brother had almost the same money as the other brother, but one gradually became bankrupt. One had $18 billion, the other had $21 billion. One gradually became bankrupt and the other became the richest man in Asia. Obviously, I'm talking about the Ambanis, right? So rich or broke is not about how much you have in your wallet. It's a mindset. You could start broke. You could start like the father of these two Ambanis. You could start like Dhirubhai Ambani with totally no money in your wallet, and you could build a $1 billion empire. Or you could start like an Anil Ambani with billions of dollars and still end up without any cash in your pocket. Why? Because rich or broke is not about wallet. It's not about what you have right now. It's about where you are going to end up. And that is not a function of where you start, but that's a function of your mindset. So rich or broke is mindset. That's the number one thing I want you to remember. Okay. Now, in terms of salary and revenue, as I was saying, that any career we choose, any project we pick up as a company, that's because we want a salary or a revenue from it. So let's just talk about, let's say just today is our first day at work and we're trying to maximize our salary, or today is my first venture at a company. I'm trying to maximize that revenue. So how do you do it? So there are some finance theories about it, and I'll try to draw some engineering equivalents of those theories to explain the concept. But right now we're trying to maximize this revenue, or right now we're trying to maximize the salary, and I'm going to talk about how to do that. So in management, we have something called modern portfolio theory. I know this equation looks very daunting, but let me just explain what this means. All that this equation is saying is do not put all your eggs in one basket. How is it saying that? It's saying that in this way. It's saying that when you have to get return on your money is like interest rate, or let's say you put in stock, then you get some return. Whatever extra you get compared to whatever you put, that's your return. So if you want to maximize your return, you can choose various asset classes. You can put it in either equity, you can put it in bonds, you can put it in gold, you can put it in crypto now, or you could put it in cash. And your total return would be basically a function of whatever you have allocated wherever. So let's say if you have $100, and if you put 60 of that in bond and 20 of that in equity and 10 in crypto and 10 in gold, then the final outcome would be an average performance of these different asset classes that you have put in. Now it turns out that let's say you put $60 of your money into equity versus let's say if you put $20 of your money into equity, then the majority of your return is determined by which asset class that you put your money in. So let me repeat. Let's just take two examples. It'll be easier that way to understand. Let's say there is equity and there is bond. There is stock and there is bond. Just two for now. So you have $100 of, you have 100 rupee. You could put them entirely into stock, or you could put them entirely into bond, or you could put it into some proportion. So what it's saying is that majority of your return comes from where you put your money, and very little comes from picking up within that asset class. So for example, let's say you want to put 80% of your money into equity, then majority of your return comes from you putting it into a stock, as opposed to then you picking up, okay, shall I buy Mahindra share or shall I buy share of, let's say, Tata, right? That has lesser of an impact. It has impact, but lesser. As opposed to, let's say, if you put all your money in government bonds. Okay, so that's the point here. Why am I telling you this? But before I tell you why am I telling you this, let's also look at it from an engineering perspective. So we have all studied about resistance, and we know there are conductors, there are superconductors, there are semiconductors, and there are insulators. So let's say we have a mixture of these. Then let's say you have some conductor and you have some non-conductor, some insulating material, and you powder them and you make a powder of it. and then you want to calculate what is the resistance of this powder. You will find out that the resistance of this powder is the average resistance of the semiconductor and the conductor. So if you put more conductor, then it will be more conducting. That means the resistance would be less. If you put less conductor and more insulating material, then the resistance would be higher. Very simple, right? Same theory goes with finance. Same theory goes with a salary as well. Now, let's having understood this, apply this to project management or apply this to salary. What does it mean? What it means is that you or your company is like that money bag. Okay, I could put myself, which means I could allocate myself either into bond or into equity or into crypto. In human terms, what it means is that if I treat myself like a money bag, I could put myself into various kind of industries. I could become a manager. I could become an engineer. I could become a librarian, whatever. There's so many options available to me. But when I'm putting myself into one of these, on day one, you could be the best librarian in the world, or you could be the best manager in the world, or you could be the best engineer in the world. On day one, you are going to get the average salary of that industry. It's only later that you discover what you're good at, and then you might get more than everybody else, but on day one, you get the average salary. So it's very important to know where you're allocating yourself. You as an individual, also you as a company. Where do you want to allocate yourself? What project you want to allocate yourself to? What project your company wants to do? Because some projects will pay you higher than the other. For example, IT industry historically paid higher, but there are industries like manufacturing that paid lower. So those kind of differences will always be there. You could compare one to a conductor and the other to a semiconductor or non-conductor. So depending on where you put yourself, your return is going to be different. Okay, so that's the concept number one when we talk about how to maximize salary. Okay, let me come to concept number two. Now the concept number two is about default probability. No matter what engineering you studied, whether you studied structural engineering or you studied mechanical engineering or you studied electrical engineering, we always have this concept of default probability, which is what is the probability of this thing failing? That's all it is. And the same concept is there in finance as well. So everything has a default probability. Even bonds have a default probability. What is a bond? Bond is something where you put $100 and it gives you an interest. It gives you a coupon. That interest could be $10, for example, 10%. So at the end of 1 year, you will get $110 because you put $100 right now. You will get $110 later. Let me ask you a very simple question. I am a banker. Okay, let's assume I'm a bank, and somebody comes who has very good credit. He always pays his bills on time and everything. And one person comes who doesn't have a job, and I'm not sure whether this guy is going to pay back my money or not. Who do you think I will charge more money from? Who will I charge more interest rate? Obviously, the person who I don't know is going to be able to pay me back. So this thing is called interest rate or coupon. So there, what I'm going to talk about is that we are also like that. When we allocate ourselves to a certain industry or to a certain job, that job we are investing our time and effort. That is our principal. The salary you get is the interest. That salary is given to you by that company. So it is quite possible that you could go to a job that pays you higher just because it's going to fail. In the bank example, you could go to you could be somebody who is likely to default, who is likely not going to pay their principal back. And just because you don't pay your principal back, I would charge you higher interest rate. In terms of job, there are so many industries that could be sinking. And because they are sinking, they're still competing with the same talent that everybody else is they might be willing to pay you higher. For example, if in the year 2000, you were to be made the general manager of Kodak, versus, let's say, an upcoming IT industry. The IT industry probably would have paid you lower at that time and Kodak would have paid you higher. Why? Because Kodak was almost going to sink. So people in Kodak the company Kodak would have paid you more just to retain you, because otherwise you would have left. And that is the problem, because most of the times we take a very myopic view of life. We think, okay, on day one, I'm getting higher salary. On day one, I'm getting more money. Let me just pick this. But you have not done the net present value calculation of your life. You don't know how long will you be paid that extra money that you're being paid compared to other industry. So it's very important to know whether the industry you're joining is sinking and that's why it's high up in the air, or is it really an industry that's going to last. So that's the second concept. So what have we talked about so far? So far we have talked about two concepts. We have said that if we want to maximize our revenue or if we want to maximize our salary, we need to essentially look at an industry that pays more. That was the first concept, which was the modern portfolio theory. And then I'm saying that some industries are sinking. Those sinking industry may pay you more. They may pay you more revenue. They may pay you more salary. Now let's move on. Now the same concept about this sinking industry, I'm now trying to explain in terms of mechanical engineering. What I'm saying is that we have all studied this in our maybe A-level or O-level physics. When you're pushing something, you need to apply force. There will be a friction which will resist that, and the acceleration is the difference of those two. So over here, what I'm saying is that this force is like the salary and acceleration is like the happiness. So if I want to, if there is something which applies more friction, let's say there is a sinking industry has more friction. So in order for me to give you the same level of satisfaction, I might increase your salary just so that you come and join. But then you know what happens with friction, right? Over time, you get rubbed off. So that is important to remember here, that when you're trying to choose an industry, when you're trying to choose a job, don't choose a job that has a lot of friction, because you might be getting more salary in the beginning, but sooner or later you will get worn out. Okay, so that's again the same thing about sinking ship in language of physics. Okay, then there is something called Sharpe ratio. What Sharpe ratio says is that in any industry, in any job, if you take more risk, then you get paid more. For example, let's talk about aeroplane. Now in aeroplane, you have pilot and you also have flight attendant, which is kind of like air hostess, right? So who is taking more risk? Obviously the pilot, because pilot is not just responsible for his or her own life, but also the life of 400 people at the back of the plane. So anytime you take more risk, and other name for risk is opportunity. So anytime you take more risk, anytime you're entrusted with more opportunity, you get paid more, you are rewarded more, you get more salary. So it's the same in engineering. In engineering, in petrochemical engineering, you have downstream and upstream. So anytime you are upstream, which is basically closer to the oil rig, that is more dangerous, and those guys obviously get more than, let's say, somebody who's working at a petrol pump, because the danger, the risk at an oil rig is much more than at a petrol pump. So again, now let's bring all these three concepts together. What I'm trying to say is, let's say if you want to, let's talk first about our personal finance. Let's say if you want to maximize your salary. So how do you maximize using these three concepts? Number one, pick up an industry that pays more. No brainer, right? That was the first concept we talked about. And then maybe potentially pick up an industry that is sinking, because that's likely to pay you more. And within that sinking industry, pick up a job that is riskiest. Okay, let me repeat. If you just want to maximize your salary, and we're just talking about day one salary, okay? Pick up an industry that pays high. Most likely that industry is a sinking industry. And that within that industry, pick up the riskiest job. And same thing, by the way, applies to project that companies do. Pick up a project that pays you high. That could be a sinking project, and pick up the riskiest part of that project as a company, and you might maximize your revenue. The problem is you don't know how long that revenue will last. You don't know how long that salary will come, and that is where we talked about the concept of default probability. You don't know when that thing is going to default. So in life, if you pick up a wrong industry, if you pick up a wrong job, many of us will pick up a wrong job, we will pick up a wrong industry just because it pays more. Many of us as managers, as company owners, will pick up a wrong project just because that project is giving me more revenue. But when you do that, what are you investing? You are investing your time and effort. That is like your principal. 5 years down the line, you may realize that that industry no longer exists. So not only you lost all the future coupons, not only you're not going to get your salary, but you also lost your principal. Your principal was the 5 years of time and effort that you put in. After 5 years of putting that time and effort, you will realize that whatever time and effort you put into this industry is no longer relevant, and you basically forfeited your principal. You are unemployable because the skill set that you have for 5 years or 10 years, no other industry needs it. So don't be myopic. Don't look at short-term view. Don't, either you're as a company or as an individual, have a long-term view of things. Don't just look at, okay, what is my revenue going to be in quarter 1? And a lot of companies are managed like that, unfortunately, right now. We just look at quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3. Have a long-term perspective. Don't go for shortcuts. That's my message to you right now. Okay, moving on. Now we are slightly changing gears, and it's something which I already talked about, why you should not be focusing on maximizing your day 1 salary, because life is long. You can't just be myopic about things. Why you should not be looking at just 1 quarter. CV versus eulogy, this is very simple. It's basically what are you trying to build? See, very often we are going for speed. We are without knowing which direction we are headed in. Adding one more line on our resume, adding one more accolade in our company's long list of accolades without knowing where we are headed. The problem in life is that, your lifeline is also your deadline, or rather your deadline is your lifeline, and nobody knows when that deadline suddenly hits. And when that deadline suddenly hits, very morbid thought, but imagine if today were your last day, you somehow went out of this conference room and a truck or something hit you, and now you are suddenly on the hospital bed. At that time, the only question you would be asking yourself would be, was my life a success? And if the answer to that question is no, then obviously you wanted to change something in your life. And if you know that you wanted to change something in your life, then what are you waiting for? Because you really don't know how long you're going to live. So if you want to change something, change now. So many of us want to change things, but we wait forever. Okay, when I am 40, I will do this. When I am 50, I will do this. I will do this at retirement. No. If you want to do something, do now. Same for companies. If you want to do something, if you want to innovate now. Don't wait, because you don't know how long your company or you yourself are going to last. Act now is the message for you over here in the CV versus eulogy. CV is something that you're building yourself. Eulogy is something that people say when you're gone. Oftentimes when you're gone, people don't talk about how much money you had. People don't talk about how many degrees you have. They talk about how many lives you have impacted. And that's the same for companies as well. People don't talk about how much revenue a company made. People talk about how the company impacted their life. That is something which you need to remember as managers, as individuals. Okay, again the same thing. This book was written by a British nurse. It's top five regrets of the dying, and in this she mentions about the regret that the dying people had. Number 1, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself. How many of us live fake life which is not true to ourselves? I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. How many of you never called your friend and suddenly you realize they're gone in COVID? I wish I had let myself be happier. How many of you are unhappy? Why are you unhappy? And that's my next thing that I want to talk about. Happiness. How to be happy. Actually, happiness is very simple if you think about it. And I have put that happiness in an equation over here. What I say is that happiness is attainment minus desire. Let me explain what that means. So when we talk about happiness, let's talk about exam. Let's say you were taking an exam, and in this exam you hope to get a B. Somehow you got an A grade, or let's say you wanted to get 80%, and somehow you got 90% in your exam. So you got more than you desired. Now you're happy. But let's say you wanted 80%, but you only got 70%. Now you are unhappy because you got less than you desired. Okay. Same thing happens to corporates as well. Let's say they wanted to have 100 million revenue. They only got 80. Unhappy. If they got 120, happy. So that's the first level of understanding of what happiness is. But the problem is that, do you always get what you desire? A company could desire 100 million revenue, you could desire 90% marks, but do you always get that? No, right? So what can you focus on? You can only focus on your efforts. So this attainment is not in your control. What is in your control is your effort. What is in your control is sincerity with which you're going to execute this. So that's the second level of understanding of this equation, that you really can't control this side of the equation. You can't control attainment. You can only control your desire. So you need to lower your desire, or at least need to make your desires pious, in line with bigger purpose, bigger cause. Again, we can talk more about this. The other thing I want to talk about desire is that if your desires start controlling you, then basically you will do anything to attain whatever you desire. Any student who cheated an exam, any salesperson who ever bribed, any manager who fudged number, they all did because their desire to attain was so strong that they wanted to attain no matter what. I want to get 90%, I will cheat. I want to be the best salesperson, I will bribe. I want to make sure my company is number one, I'm going to cheat on numbers. I'm going to make an accounting fraud, people like Enron, right? So you need to really be controlling your desires. You need to know that the success to happiness is basically trying to control your desires and not having your desires control you. So that's basically happiness. And again, in that equation, as I said, you can only control your effort. You can't control your results. So focus on what you can control. Focus on your effort. Finally, we are going to now go into the thick of our topic, which is Ikigai. So life is like a car. I like to give this example. And in this car, you need to be in the driver's seat. Oftentimes it happens that we are not in the driver's seat. Somebody else is driving our car. Somebody, like, we are living a life which somebody else has told. In terms of that same driving example, see, we always have the destination in mind, which is where we want to go. And then there is a roadmap, which is how we will go. But then even if you have the roadmap, even if you have the destination, if you don't have enough fuel in the car, can you go? You can't. And this fuel in the car is basically the why of life. Why do you want to do something? And this why is actually Ikigai. Okay, let me explain in another terms. So you see, all of us have gone to universities, all of us have gone to school. So when we come to school, when we come to universities, we all know what we want to be. We know we want to be engineers, we know we want to be managers, we know we want to be accountant, we know we want to be librarians. And the schools and colleges will teach you some skills. They will teach you some calculus, they will teach you some debit credit, they will teach you some bookkeeping, which will tell you the how of becoming that thing. Where they fail miserably is why. Why do I want to be an engineer? Why do I want to be a librarian? Why do I want to be an accountant? And that why has to come from within, both for you and for the company. So that's where Ikigai comes in. That's where we need to figure out, why do I exist? What is my purpose in life? What is it that makes my life worth living for? So when I talked in the beginning, I said those circles are not Ikigai. And I stick to that. Those circles are not Ikigai. This circle on your screen is not Ikigai. Ikigai is basically finding out who you are. Ikigai is trying to be in sync with yourself. But these circles can help you figure out what your Ikigai is. How? Let me explain how. So Ikigai is, first of all, finding out what you are passionate about. Many of us never bother to figure out what we are passionate about. We'll go from cradle to grave without realizing what we are passionate about. So first of all, find out what you're passionate about. Once you know what you're passionate about, try to find out your skills. All of us have skills. The problem is we start comparing our skill to somebody else's skill and then we say we don't have skills. No, all of us have a skill. First of all, find your passion and then figure out what skill you have, and using that, try to solve a world problem. Why a world problem? Because if it's not a world problem, it's not worth solving for. Your roof is leaking is not a world problem. Solve a big problem. So figure out what your passion is, and within that passion, use your skills to solve for a world problem. And what I'm going to say next is very, very, very important, such that you get paid for it. Because if you don't get paid for it, then it's not your Ikigai. You need to absolutely get paid for it. Same for companies. Companies are not there for charity. Companies need to find out what they are passionate about. What is it that they stand for? What is their purpose? And once they have figured out that, they need to see what skills they have within the company that allows them to solve this problem uniquely. What makes them qualified better than others? And they have to solve in such a way that they get revenue for it. Because if you don't get revenue for it, you can't pay your employees. You can't sustain a company. Same with individuals. So you absolutely need to marry all this. And when you marry all this, then you have found your Ikigai. Because Ikigai is basically being in sync with yourself. Now you are doing what you're passionate about. You're using your skills and you're getting satisfaction of solving a problem and you're getting paid for it. So that can lead you to find your Ikigai. So again, I'm trying to now talk about Ikigai in slightly different terms, but it's again the repetition of what I've already talked to you about. So Ikigai is basically finding your swadharma. Swa means my, dharma means not religion. Okay. If one thing I want you to take away from this talk is that dharma is not religion. Dharma is innate nature of something. What are you? Who are you? Understanding that is dharma. Innate nature of something is dharma. All of us are different. All of us have different dharma. So the same compassion, which is a blessing for a doctor because doctor is supposed to be compassionate, can become an inhibition for a soldier because soldier's dharma is to kill the enemy. But if the soldier is so filled with compassion, how is he going to kill? So that is why Ikigai is kind of trying to find out who you are, right? Which is same as Swadharma. What is you? Who are you? What is your innate ability? What are you made of? What is your composition? That is your Swadharma. So I've listed some points. Ikigai is a Japanese word meaning reason for being, which we have already discussed. Something that makes life worth living for. It gives you direction and purpose in life, both as individual and as company. It is about doing what makes you happy and going with the flow. But most of us don't know if we are happy or not. So how do you know if you are happy? Very simple. No matter what you do, if you feel light like a cork in water as opposed to heavy like a stone, then you are happy. If you enjoy what you're doing, then you are happy. Ikigai is the fire within which propels you to spontaneously spring into action. Monday morning, how many of you wish I don't have to go to work? If you wish that, then quit that job. That is not your Ikigai. You are in the wrong profession. Ikigai is about enjoying the journey of life while deriving meaning from it. Not only living your life, but also deriving a sense of meaning, sense of purpose from the life while you are living your life. It's a journey. Ikigai is the resilience that keeps you motivated to keep going and not give up in the face of adversity. No matter what career you choose, no matter what industry your company is in, all of them will have adversities, all of them will have challenges. Life is inherently full of challenges. Ikigai is like that fuel in the car that keeps you going when the going gets tough. So you need to have that fuel, you need to have that purpose, you need to have that reason for being, both as an individual and as a company. How do you know what your purpose is? By first of all figuring out who you are. That's why it's important to know what you're passionate about, which is exactly the same concept which is in India, which is Swadharma. So finally, Ikigai not only gives a sense of purpose to life, but also is the very motivation for living it. It is something that will motivate you to live. Now, once you have found your Ikigai, you will naturally be happier. And when you're happier, you will live longer. But don't try to reverse engineer this and say, okay, because I want to be happy, because I want to live longer, so I will follow my Ikigai. No, that's the wrong way of looking at things. That's doing the right thing for the wrong reason. It's a bit like saying that if I want to be healthy, I should do pranayam and asanas in yoga. While that may be true, but that is not the purpose. You are now looking at the outcome and then making that outcome as your primary goal, which should not be the case. You should look at the core. So you do yoga because yoga is inherently good for you, not because, okay, I want to keep my body fit, hence I'm going to do yoga. You follow your Ikigai not because you want to be happy, not because you want to live longer, but because if you follow your Ikigai, then you will naturally be happy, you will naturally live longer. So that's the message here. Okay, let's see, there are a few more slides which I'll talk about. So obviously I've written a couple of books on Ikigai, and these are 25 people who are mentioned in my book. I'll very quickly talk about them. So Aarti Kumar works in Lucknow on infant mortality. Abhishek Gupta is the founder of Circles Life. Anuj is the founder of Milap. The second Anuj over here is the only biomimic in the entire Southeast Asia. Baisakhi is a world traveler. Gautam is an entrepreneur in Chile. Jason is an entrepreneur in Goa. He set up India's first hostel chain. John Gomes is a mountaineer as well as a partner in a big consulting company. Karthik is a mathematician and academician. He teaches at a university in Singapore. Kiran is a dancer. Karthik is a UI UX designer. Manik was the chief product officer of Uber. Nitin Pai sits in Bangalore. He set up India's first public policy institute. Praneeth is a researcher at MIT. Pranoti is an inventor of Rotimatic. Puneet is a bureaucrat. He used to be working for Union Public Service Commission, but now is based out of Paris. Saurabh is a pilot. Sayan is a bureaucrat in United Nations. Sudhanshu is an entrepreneur. Surya is is a partner at McKinsey. Susan is a dancer. Swami Turanand is a monk, and Varun is a Hollywood videographer. Vishruth is a philanthropist. What is common among all these people? All these people were engineers. They all began their journey as engineers. And that is one thing I want to say, that engineering is a very diverse degree. It enables you to think of life logically and think of companies in a logical, consistent way. So engineering is a very beautiful trait. And if you marry that engineering with a sense of purpose, with Ikigai, then you will actually know where you are headed. And when you marry engineering with a sense of purpose, you create companies that last. You create a life for yourself that is fulfilling, that is happy. So that's my message to you. Of course, I've written books on this. So if you want, you could buy this book. This is the QR code to buy the book. And there is another book which I have written, which is called An Atheist Gets the Gita, which is slightly different from the other book, because this Ikigai book is basically looking at others and trying to see how you can get inspired by others. This Gita book is basically looking within, looking inside you, that now that I'm inspired from others, how do I inculcate this from within, from inside? So with that, I will pause here. I'm happy to take questions. You can ask me any question that you like, and I'll pass it back to the moderator.
Can I take a question, sir?
Sure.
First question, please elaborate about the sunrise industries in a post-pandemic times.
Okay, so sunrise industries in the post-pandemic times, first of all, those industries which are more people-centric, those industries which have a vision for the future, they are always going to be the sunrise industry. So what are these industries? So blockchain is coming in a big way, right? Now we are trying to have everything verified through blockchain. So that's one sunrise industry. Then you are having IoT, Internet of Things, which is basically 5G is coming and all your things are going to be interconnected. So that's another industry of the future. Then another industry of the future is going to be anything to do with purpose, anything that helps people figure out that purpose. So increasingly, millennials and Gen Z are going to be your biggest customers, biggest consumers. So, and these people do talk about purpose. So if your company has a concrete purpose, if you're doing something in that domain, then it's a sunrise industry. One thing I would like to say here is that when you talk about sunrise industry, this keeps changing all the time. Let me give you an example. In the previous century, in the 20th century, what was development? Development was gas guzzling engines, tall chimneys, and anything to do with plastic. Today, when we talk about development, today when we talk about sunrise industry, it is reversing all this. If you are manufacturing in a clean way, which is less of those chimneys, if you are manufacturing a car that doesn't consume, that doesn't guzzle out that pollution, and if you are having sustainable material, and Shankarji over here is a material scientist, he will tell you more about this. That is development. So sunrise industry today are those industries which do not just care about profit, the first P, but also care about the planet and people. And this is all connected through purpose. So if you're doing something in green technology, if you're doing something with Internet of Things, if you're doing something with blockchain, those are going to be the sunrise industry according to me.
Second question, how to figure out the passion?
How to figure out passion? Okay, so if you read my book, in the last few pages, I have an exercise. In that exercise, I systematically tell how to figure out what your passion is. Today, when I talked about, I just gave you a glimpse of what passion can do for you. But the question remains, okay, now that I know this, what passion can do for me, how do I figure out what my passion is? And most of us honestly don't think about this. And even if we think about this, we don't have a systematic scientific way of thinking about this. So if you pick up my book, in the last few chapters, there is in the last few pages, there are a few pages where I talk about figuring out your passion. And it's actually that question about why am I doing this? Right? And once you have answered that, you know what your passion is, but there is a systematic way in which I deal with this. So maybe you pick up a copy of the book and figure out how you can figure out what your passion is.
Please give examples on how a common man can find his passion.
How a common man can figure out their passion? Very simple. You see, passion is anything that makes you live, that makes you happy. Okay, so for example, if I were to say that, what would you do if I did not pay money for it? If I take money out, because money basically colors the whole thing. If I say, what would you do even if you are not paid for it? That is your passion. The challenge is how to make that passion your vocation. How do I do it in such a way that I get paid for it? And that's where you need to have an innovative solution. That's where you need to put your thinking cap about figuring out that, okay, I know my passion, but I also have realistic problem of feeding my family. So how do I marry both of those? So oftentimes, as I said, most people don't think about their passion, and even those who think about their passion are unable to figure out, how do I make my passion my vocation? So that is where you need to have a systematic thought about, will people pay for it? Let me give you an example. Let's say that you believe that you're passionate about music, and you think that world needs more melodious music, and you think that you have the skill to sing, but when you open your mouth, everybody goes to sleep. Now that's not your Ikigai, that's not your passion, because it may be your passion, but it's not your Ikigai, because you're not able to monetize that. So you need to always have a practical take on your passion, which is, how do you marry your passion with a vocation?
Uh, Please share a memorable incident from Ayodhya to Singapore.
From Ayodhya to Singapore. Okay, so this is quite funny in my life, that although I was born in Ayodhya, I never read or even opened any of these scriptures, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita or it's Mahabharata or it's Puranas, while I was in Ayodhya. And then I came out of India. I lived in many countries overseas, including Singapore. And then incidentally, I opened knowledge which was freely available in my own country, outside of my country. So I think that was very ironic. In Hindi, we say chirag tale andhera. So there is always darkness beneath the lamp. So when it was easily accessible to me, then I didn't think about it. Only when it was removed, then only when I went overseas, then I opened it. And I find that quite amusing in my journey.
This is a very nice concept and propels you to think. But once you got into the job and working over the years, can't come out due to financials and other consistencies. In such situations, how to get your Ikigai and work for it?
Yeah, so there I give the monkey example. So what happens is that, you see, most of us overcomplicate our problems because we don't think ahead. So let me explain what I mean by that. So let's say there is a monkey. So to a monkey, if you give a banana versus $100, the monkey is always going to choose banana. Why? Because the monkey doesn't know that with $100 I can buy 100 more bananas. And most of us are like that monkey. Given money versus good health, we always prioritize money. We will work very hard. We will continue doing something we hate, and in the process, because we are not happy, spoil our health and be completely broken down, and then spend much more money to regain that health. So what I'm trying to say here is that, don't be like a monkey. It's never too late for you to change and pursue an area of your passion, because if you don't, the cost of not pursuing your passion is much higher than cost of totally ignoring it. You see, not just monetarily, but also in terms of health, also in terms of your own wellness. So you should always look at your life holistically. Yes, without pain, there is no gain. In short term, you will have a pain. In short term, you may have liabilities, you may have certain responsibilities that you need to take care of. But if you plan for it holistically, you will figure out, give yourself 3 months, give yourself 6 months. Okay, in 3 months, I'm going to change this. And in order for me to change this, I'm going to focus on these 3 things, and let me see what is the outcome of it. If it works, continue, because something is working. If it's not working, then pivot, course correct, and then figure out how else can I make sure that I'm on the right track. But yes, this is a very practical question you're asking. How do I ensure that I am pursuing my passion without compromising on my responsibilities. So that's where you need to have financial discipline. That's where you need to do a little bit of planning, just like you would do for any engineering project. Let's say any company which has an existing revenue source and thinks that, okay, that's going to be a revenue source forever. It's very myopic, right? Because anytime something can come and disrupt it. So you have to always plan ahead. So you have to always try to do it in phases. So while you are still in a job that you are and you want to do something different, pursue it as a hobby first, then try to see if you can monetize, gradually see if you can increase the value of monetization, and then jump. Okay, so it's a process.
Can our vocation be converted to our passion, or it's always inbuilt?
No, so this was the whole focus of my talk, that you see, you should not be in a vocation that is not your passion. You should always be pursuing your passion. Make your passion your vocation. Like it says, right? Find a job that you love and you will never need to work ever again. So if you are actually in that situation, you know, you will regret it. I don't know what your age is, you will regret. You will regret pursuing something, pursuing your vocation which is not your passion. Sooner or later, you will feel burnt out. So no matter what your age is, try to course correct, because you essentially will take life away from yourself, both in terms of living life and also in terms of the number of years to your life. So please make your vocation your passion, or your passion your vocation, whichever way it works.
Is Ikigai is what Krishna said to Arjuna in Gita, do your duty without looking reward?
Kind of, that is Bhagavad Gita verse, chapter 2, verse 47. So what Krishna is telling to Arjuna is basically to focus on things that Arjuna can control. What can he control? He can control his input. He can control his effort. He doesn't know the outcome of the war. That is not something he should bother about. He should bother about following his Kshatriya dharma, following whatever he was set out to do. And another thing over there that I like to say is that if you think about Arjuna, he was one of the most qualified people ever born. In that time, he was the Sarvshresth Dhanurdhar. In modern equivalent, he would be equivalent to 3 or 4 PhDs. Despite having all that qualification, despite being so highly endowed with so much of talent, he still was lost about his life. He did not know what the purpose of his life was. He did not know what direction to pursue. And that is why you need a mentor in life. That is why you need a guru in life. That is why you need somebody who tells you what you should be doing. So to that effect, Bhagavad Gita is 700 shlokas. It's 1400 lines, hardly 75 minutes to 90 minutes conversation. What changes in that conversation? What changes is that Krishna becomes the world's first motivational speaker. The same Arjuna, he motivates him and tells him what his purpose is, which you can say is same as telling Arjuna what his Ikigai is. What is your reason for being? What is it that you exist for? What is it that should spring you into action? What is the energy that should be driving you? So in that sense, totally, what Krishna told Arjuna is telling Arjuna what his Ikigai is, what his passion is, what his duty is, what his Swadharma is.
How to go beyond the fear?
How to go beyond the fear? Okay, so again, I talk about motivation. So we talk about in physics, we have 4 fundamental forces, right? We have electric forces, we have gravitational forces, we have strong nuclear, weak nuclear. So fear is like gravitational force, present everywhere, but the weakest. See, fear is the easiest to overcome. And then besides fear, you have the force of love, then you have the force of duty, you have the force of purpose. So fear is actually most abundant, but also the weakest. If you know, anybody who has, and all of us have always been afraid of something, whether it's exam or whether it's some kind of phobia we have, and we have realized that the moment you try to focus on what's beyond that, you suddenly realize that it is that you have so much energy within you that you can actually overcome that. And there is this thing, na, dar ke aage jeet hai. So you have to really think beyond fear, because fear is nothing. Most of the time it's self-learned helplessness. You think that you are afraid, and this fear could be many things. It could be fear of losing job. It could be fear of dying. In fact, all the fears that we have is fear of dying modified in some form or way. So, we are very afraid to lose. Okay. The biggest thing that you can lose ever is your own life. And everything from there is modification. So you're afraid of losing your prestige. You're afraid of losing your job. You're afraid of losing your face. You're afraid of losing your reputation. So all that is basically modification of fear of death. So when you want to overcome fear, then you have to think about what is the worst that can happen, and then think about whether that worst is strong enough to break you, or can you go beyond. See, it's very strange that under the same set of stress, under the same set of fear, some people break record. If you ask any Olympic gold medalist, they are all afraid whether am I going to perform today or not, because split second can make a difference between a gold medal and being out of the competition. They're all afraid, they're all stressed. But then they use that stress to become positive, and they use their stress to break records. But some of us, if we are not equipped enough to handle that fear or stress, we can break ourselves. So that is resilience. It comes from within. That's why you need to have a strong purpose. When the purpose is strong, fear is nothing.
What is the role of purpose in the organization?
Yeah, very good question. So in the last century, there was no role of purpose in organization. The only role, there are 4 P's I talked about: purpose, profit, planet, and people. The only P that mattered was profit. But over time, because you see, capitalism is not that old if you think about it. It's hardly been 50 years that capitalism has been in existence. Of course, socialism, or sorry, communism failed, but just because communism failed, that doesn't mean that capitalism is automatically right. So now the leading concept globally is purpose. Okay, how do you define purpose? Purpose is basically trying to get profit in such a way that you also care about planet and people. Why? Because we are moving beyond the concept of shareholders to stakeholders. You get the license. Any company gets a social license to operate. Any company has to deal with the physical environment that it is operating in. So if you're myopic enough to deplete the physical environment that you are in, or if you're myopic enough to not take care of either the people that are working for you or the customers that you are serving, then sooner or later you will be out of business. So there is a very strong role of purpose in companies today. In fact, there are a lot of books written on this. There is a book called Conscious Capitalism, which has been written by John McKay and Raj Sishodia. There is a book which has just come out from Harvard by Rananjay Gulati. It's called Deep Purpose. So all these books talk about the role of purpose in corporate. In fact, my next book is about the same topic. It's about ESG, which is environment, society and governance, which together forms one of the ways or one of the lens of looking at what purpose is. And I always say this in my talks that, most companies actually don't have a purpose. Sadly speaking, most companies only have one purpose: to sell you things that you don't need at a price that you can't afford, using a bank loan that you don't want. So if that is your purpose in life as a company, then your company is not going to be lasting for long, because increasingly companies which are more conscious about who they are serving and in the environment that they're operating, they are the companies that outperform over a long period of time. So if you look at the statistics for companies that have stayed for the longest, most of these companies are companies with purpose. Talk about Tata's, talk about I mean, there are many companies as such which I can talk about, but if you don't have a purpose, then your runway is very small. So there is absolutely immediate need for purpose being part of any corporate strategy.
What is desire versus focus equation?
Can you repeat the question?
What is the desire versus focus equation?
Okay, so I think the person is talking about the happiness equation. So you see, when I talked about the happiness equation, I said happiness is equal to attainment minus desire. So we are all engineers here, at least most of us, and we can say, okay, then if I put my desire to zero, then my happiness is all, then I will always attain, obviously I will attain something, and then I will be always happy. Is it possible? Can you put your desire to zero? You can't, because as human we have desires. So and it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have desire. But the point to make here is your desire a selfish desire which is only about yourself? How much more money can I get? How much more can I suck from the universe? Or is it about a collective desire about serving other people and at the same time doing good for yourself? So do good and do well. Do good for yourself, but also do well for the society. So when we talk about desire, it is very important to have desires, because without desire there is no progress. Without desire, forget about progress. Even progeny will not happen. Even kids would not be born if there is no desire. You need to have desire for anything. So once you have a desire, let's say you desire to get, let's say, A grade or B grade in your exam. What is important then is to dissociate yourself from the desire. Desire helps you in setting goal, but it doesn't help you in getting there. So once you have set your goal, because your desire will help you to set that goal, do not make that goal be your end all. After that, you have to be totally barrag from that goal and focus on the process, focus on the abhyas part, not on that desire. Okay, I hope I've answered that question.
Yeah, Mr. Suresh said, "डर के आगे जीत है," and someone anonymous said, "Very inspiring talk, special around vocation and passion. Is Ikigai something that keeps evolving? Can the passion keep charging as we progress on the journey? Can you also share your own Ikigai with us?"
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So most people think that Ikigai is static. No, Ikigai is not static. Ikigai can change. Okay. And the other thing is that Ikigai is not something external. Ikigai is within you. You are like a slab of marble. And if I need to make a sculpture out of you, the sculpture is within you. All I need to do is remove all the noise, remove all the extra marble, right? So Ikigai is within you. You just need to discover it. It's not something that will come from outside. That's one thing. And my own journey. So you see, when I was young, when I was in my school, I actually wanted to be theoretical physicist. I really thought that I was a Nobel Prize winning material. All it took me to take a course in quantum mechanics in NTU to realize that I may be smart, but I'm not that smart, right? I mean, sometimes when you live in a small city, you really think that you're the brightest and the most brilliant, because maybe you are the biggest fish in a well, but when you go to the ocean, you realize there are so many more fish, and then you realize how much you don't know. So the important thing in life is to realize who you are, what you don't know, right? So in my own Ikigai journey, initially I wanted to be a theoretical physicist. On the way, I realized that maybe I'm not as equipped in terms of my skills to be a theoretical physicist. And that realization is very important. The sooner you realize who you are, the longer runway you have in your life to execute what you really want to do, right? So for me, it was more through a process of elimination. Some people are lucky. They know from day one what they want to be. For some people, it's a journey, it's a process of elimination. So for me, it was more a process of elimination. So I realized I probably cannot be a theoretical physicist. Okay. Then being in Singapore, I studied some while I was in NTU. Besides engineering, I studied a bit of economics and a bit of physics. So I got interested in economics because economics is a very interesting science, because it's a social science, but it puts mathematical methods to it. So it got me very excited. And from there, I went to banking. And then for the last 1 decade, I was a banker. I enjoyed what I was doing. But then I realized that maybe there is something more that I can do over and beyond this. And that's when I realized that I have this gift that I'm absolutely curious about things. And I have this ability to connect the three eyes. What are these three eyes? I like to connect ideas, insights, and individuals. Okay, so I can connect things in a unique way with a unique perspective. Like you would have heard about Ikigai, but nobody probably talks about Ikigai in engineering. You might have heard about Gita, but nobody talks about how Gita is similar to, let's say, Ikigai, right? So I like to marry concept. I like to see interdisciplinary things. So when I figured out that that was my unique skill set, and when I spoke about these things, people were listening to it, then I thought that, okay, I cannot talk about this everywhere, but maybe I could write about this thing so that more people could read about what I am saying. So I started doing that. Initially, I started writing on LinkedIn. That's where I knew only one platform to write. So when I wrote my first article, 300 people saw, second article about 1,000, third article about 2 or 3,000. By the time I was on my 12th or 10th article, 30 to 40,000 people were reading what I was writing. And that's when I realized that maybe I'm writing something that is making sense. And then gradually I started writing books. When I did books, then more people started calling me to do talks. So it's a journey. So for me, now when you talk about what my purpose is or what my Ikigai is, it's very simple. I say that my purpose is to help others find their purpose. And that's why I am giving this talk, because I want all of you to think about what your purpose is. And in that lies my satisfaction. There is always more pleasure in giving than taking. So I'm no longer interested in, I mean, when I was in my school, when I was in my university, I wanted to have the highest paid job. I wanted to have the highest grade, all that done, tick, 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 tick. And that is another thing I want to say, that, the road to renunciation is through attainment. You need to attain something to renounce something. If you haven't attained, then you can't renounce anything, because then you will always have that desire to attain it, right? So now that I have kind of, in some sense, attained some things, and I was kind of proving to others, look, I'm so great. I'm such a great student. I'm brilliant. I got the highest paid job from IIM. But then after a point, you start realizing, who am I trying to prove this to? Is there any meaning of this? And then you realize, okay, let me now try to do things that really matter. And to me, it came in my 30s. Then when I realized this, some of the people might be more enlightened that they realize this at the age of 4 or 5. There is one such person in the book, the monk. He realized what he wanted to be very early on, and he had a process to it. And there are many other stories in that book where people have either realized as a journey or have realized it ever since they know themselves. So no wrong or right. Whenever you realize, start acting on it.
Can I take a last question?
Sure.
According to you, what is the toughest part while pursuing your passion, and how to overcome it? Mr. Nikhil asked this question.
Nikhil, the toughest part of pursuing your passion is knowing yourself. Okay. Most of us do not know ourselves. Understanding who you are and not fooling yourself about believing what you want to be as what you are. So when you talk about passion, how do you know what your passion is? You know what your passion is when you know who you are. How do you know who you are? By asking those difficult questions. What makes me happy? Why do I exist? What do I want to be remembered for? And I'll tell you in a very this might be the grand finale of the session. So we all know about Nobel Prize, right? We know that Alfred Nobel created the Nobel Prize, and we today know Nobel for Nobel Prize, Alfred Nobel for Nobel Prize. But there was another thing he made. He made dynamite. Okay, he is the inventor of dynamite. So it so happened that one day his brother died, and a French newspaper wrote, "The merchant of death is dead." I repeat, the French newspaper wrote, "The merchant of death is dead." And when Alfred Nobel read that, he got very disheartened, because obviously he had made a lot of money, but what he realized is that when he's gone, people are going to write that a merchant of death is dead. And he wanted to change that. Within his own lifetime, he managed to change that. He figured out his purpose so late in life that, hey, I do not want to be remembered for somebody who is merchant of death. So that is the most difficult part, Nikhil, to understand who you are and what you want to be remembered from. From there on, it's very simple. You need to figure out the why of life. The how and the what will take care of itself if you know the why of life.
Mr. Suresh had excellent conversation, sir. Many thanks.
Thank you so much.
Over to you, Shankar, sir.
Hey, thanks a lot, Rahul, for such an insightful talk. We really thoroughly enjoyed this session, and the timing is perfect because we have been running a series of workshops on living with purpose across Mahindra organization. So for us, we are part of the automotive and the farm business. It's very close to our heart to come up with the sustainable technologies, clean mobility, democratizing technology for the farmers. Farmers, especially with small land holdings, not just in India, but anywhere across the globe. So these are things that's very close to our heart. And your talk, the timing of it, the kind of insights that you shared resonated so well with what we have been trying to do over here at the Mahindra Research Valley. So thanks so much, because I really, through this talk, I could find such a good friend, a person who is so knowledgeable and who is able to put such difficult concepts in such a simple, easy to understand way. This is brilliant, actually. Really, thanks a ton for that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shankarji. It is a pleasure, and I thoroughly enjoyed this talk. Although maybe next talk we should have more interactive. Then
absolutely, no, I am right now making sure that we also get to hear from you about the second book.
Yeah,
where you
sure.
talk about the Bhagavad Gita. We really look forward to this. Actually, this should happen without too much of a gap.
Sure. I think I would be happy to do another talk, and there again I have an interesting take on the Bhagavad Gita. I talk about Bhagavad Gita in equations. So I have mathematical equations through which I represent Bhagavad Gita shlokas. So it will be interesting to do a talk on that to engineers and managers at Mahindra.
Absolutely. The audience is predominantly engineers, so they would love to see those equations. They'll be very happy to do that. Talking about equations, my guru gave me yet another equation for happiness. He gave it as a ratio. Number of desires fulfilled, which is the numerator, and the denominator is total number of desires entertained. So either you can get more desires fulfilled or entertain less number of desires. Either way, you are going to be happy.
True.
So that ratio is something I really liked. So I think this equations based approach is going to bring some very nice, interesting perspectives to this. Really nice. So I also understand from what you said, it's a journey. It's not that you are going to sit under a tree and figure out what is my Ikigai overnight. We have to be bold enough to try things. And you started with as a passionate physicist, then went on to become an engineer, then a very successful banker. Now you are able to inspire so many people through your writing. So you're becoming a very inspiring author. So your ability to continuously explore things and get closer and closer to your Ikigai is also giving us that confidence that we'll all be able to eventually do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, there was some background noise,
Sure.
So I just wanted to wait for a second. So it's a journey. I'm sure if we follow the path that you have taken, where you went around, explored a lot of things. For example, while studying nanotechnology, studying photonics, you also explored economics and eventually found banking to be where you could really find a lot of interesting things. So that's something we would also love to do in terms of going out of our comfort zone, beyond our area of expertise, and explore other things. And maybe that could accelerate our journey towards finding our Ikigai. So this is the way you shared this whole thing as a process, getting closer and closer to Ikigai, is something that gives us a lot of confidence that each one of us will be able to eventually do that. And
So,
there is just one thing I wanted to share with the audience here.
Sure.
I was looking at the last page of your book. There is a very interesting fact that I want to make sure our audience are aware of. This is about your mission sumo.
Yeah.
Okay. So friends, you should hear this because this is yet another dimension to Rahul. Ikigai, when he has been talking about it, he also did something very interesting during this COVID time. He created Mission Sumo, which is the Singapore University's Mission Oxygen, a group of volunteers comprising alumni of NUS, NTU, and SMU. The mission collected about 170,000 US dollars and deployed 200 oxygen concentrators in various parts of India. This is something I didn't know about it at all. Just some time back, while looking at the last page of the book, I came across this. So this is amazing, Rahul. What you are doing is really, really very, very good. And also the next book, which you talked about, which is on sustainability and the SDGs, is something very close to our heart. We wish you lots and lots of success in what you are doing, because you are doing something which is very important. And I'm glad that we got connected to you at this early stage, and we'll be able to accompany you when you explore all these new areas and bring a lot of clarity and insights to this space. We are lucky that we are aware that you are there and you could also guide us at many of these areas as we also want to contribute in these spaces. So
Yeah.
this is not just a one-time interaction. We want to build on this and make sure we always stay connected as a bunch of passionate engineers at Mahindra, and you who is really figured out how to find out one's Ikigai. I'm sure we will reach out to you for your mentoring at different stages of our own journey. So
Thank
really
you.
look forward to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shankarji. I just want to say something in response to what you said. First of all, thank you so much for that wonderful acknowledgement. So, as somebody observed that was what Krishna told to Arjuna was that Ikigai, and it was. And remember, where was it spoken? Where was the Bhagavad Gita spoken? Not in the Himalayas, not in the serenity, in a battlefield. All of us fight our own battles every day. So Ikigai is something that you need to find in the battlefield, not in the Himalayas, not on a beach. Okay, that's number one. The other thing which Sir talked about was going out of a comfort zone and interdisciplinary kind of thing, right? If you look at the Nobel Prize in the last 20 years, they are all at the fringes. They are at the fringe of mathematics and social science and economics. Mathematicians get the Nobel Prizes for economics. They are in biochemistry. They are all at fringes because you see, we have siloed our knowledge so much that you have experts in everything, but the expert doesn't know about the other field. So if you really want to do something land breaking, look at the fringes, because that's where you need to explore things. So in my own case, what I realized is that, look, as a banker, I could only look at this thing. As a physicist, I could only look at this thing. As a manager, I could only look at this thing. But if I cross pollinate those things, what did I do? In today's talk, what I've done is I have taken a lot of banking concepts, superimposed them onto HR concept. That's all I have done. When I talk about default probability, when I talk about modern portfolio theory, when I talk about Sharpe ratio, that's what I'm doing. But then that gives new perspective. And I would think that at Mahindra Research Institute, because it's a research organization, you really need to think outside of what you do. And the way to do that is very simple. Try to have lunch or meeting. Everybody eats food. Try to have lunch with people who are not from your department, because you will learn so much from people who are not from your department, and you will have that aha moment when you try to exchange and cross-pollinate.
Absolutely. Thank you. And if you're in India, you should definitely visit us
Definitely,
at Mahindra Research Valley. We're in the outskirts of Chennai, closer to the airport. So we would love to host you and have a session with you in person at Mahindra Research Valley.
That will be my pleasure. That will be my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Over to you, Sunil.
Yes, sir. Dear audience, on behalf of MRU Book Club and Library G, we are very thankful to Mr. Rahul Singh, who has graced this event by sharing us with diverse knowledge and valuable thoughts on engineering to Ikigai. We take this opportunity to thank our senior management team members for attending this session in spite of their busy schedule. We would like to convey special thanks to Dr. Shankar and Shibu, who encourage us with their continuous support to this initiative. I would also like to thank my own team of Library G, KRC MRV and VC NOC team for their invaluable support. We look forward to next session in association with MRV Book Club. Thank you. Thank you all of us.
Thank you, Sunilji. Thank you, Shankarji. Thank you, Ashutashji. And thank you, Mahindra. It's my pleasure to be at one of the India's leading call grades. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Rahulji.